Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today. I've got some great folks joining me to talk about how we can execute powerful multi-layer fraud defense for financial institutions. Got a lot to cover, so we're going to jump right in. A couple housekeeping items, though. First off, this meeting is, or this webinar is being recorded. If you have any questions during this session, on the sidebar, you should see a question mark where you can click and ask questions. We do have some time at the end to answer questions. Hopefully, we still have time at the end to answer some questions. If we don't, we definitely will follow up with you individually on any questions to make sure you have those answers. Again, this is recorded. It will be sent to you after the session, potentially in a day or two, and we will make it available on many of our different streaming platforms for those that are Smart Apps customers. No further ado, as a quick intro, I am Michael Schrahl. I'm the product manager here at TTEC Digital for Smart Apps applications. I work with a lot of you every day. I live and breathe credit unions and Smart Apps, speaking to many of you about both the new challenges that you have to solve every day and looking for ways that we can solve that with you. I'm joined by Jack Caven, CEO of VoxEQ. One of the co-presenters today is going to speak about voice biometrics and how to use that as part of your defense. Next is Eric Hopper, CTO of IDGo. It's good. New in terms of working together, but they have a fantastic foundational solution to use multi-factor authentication as another defense. And then last but not least, Chris O'Leary, who's the VP of Channels from TransUnion, or as we all know them as Trusted or Trust ID, whatever your flavor may be, and talk about device authentication, how you can determine the call is really coming from the device that it says it is. And he doesn't get a picture, but he's well known. Scott Ridgway will be doing some of the demoing today. So we jump right into it. I talk to each and every one of you, not every one of you, but a lot of you every day. And I hear very often fraud is on the rise. How can we combat fraud? And we're seeing this consistent theme of it actually increasing. And in financial services, I think it's happening in many different industries, but we've seen a huge growth, as you can see here in credit unions of the past few years. What we're seeing that's obviously an increasing trend is also an increase of attacks that are taken on at the contact center. Fraud tactics are becoming much more sophisticated. People are using AI-powered voice clones, or they're spoofing their caller ID. They use social engineering to take advantage of your team members that are really being trained to just serve their members. How are they supposed to know that this member is not really a person? And ultimately, the legacy kind of approaches to performing authentication, your knowledge-based ones, are really no longer effective as being the sole means to verify or authenticate your members. So, at the end of the day, your members look at you as having fiduciary responsibility for securing and, managing their assets. And as such, it's important to ensure that you better understand both the fraud attacks that are occurring and also look at alternatives or other approaches to solve, to protect. I kind of mentioned it a little bit there, but one of the things that we're seeing is a growing challenge is that as you shore up each part of your architecture, your website, your mobile app, as you secure each and every different location or place that a fraudster could potentially penetrate to gain access or to attempt to take over, what we're finding is all of those are being extremely effective. And now the fraudsters are really resorting to taking on the easiest, in their eyes, approach to attack. And that is the contact center. One of the biggest challenges that you have here is that there's a human. Humans have emotions. You train your members, change your employees that they are expected to go to extreme kind of just really focused on enablement and helping your members. And there's a disconnect there that we see a lot, where if your agents are being trained to serve and provide the best service that they can with empathy, that causes them to put their guard down and be manipulated easily by different social engineering attacks. And keep in mind, a member or a fraudster is calling in, they may have just a piece of the puzzle and they're trying to get one more piece. They're not necessarily trying to do an account takeover, all in one interaction. It's really nearly impossible. But the key here is they're really moving a lot of those attacks to start in the contact center. And so the defense is really key in terms of focusing in that area. One other thing that I think is kind of call out specific to this slide is, while it's historical, you can see here, and it mentions 2021, a majority of fraud attacks were seen in web and mobile channels at 32% each. Back in 2022, those had dropped to 10%. A lot of that has to do with the technology you've deployed in those different areas where it is much more difficult to penetrate, meaning a simple username and password isn't going to get you into your financial system anymore. Using other mechanisms to authenticate in your mobile app or other fraud prevention systems have really helped to drop that. So your good fraudsters out there aren't going to give up. They're going to look for new avenues to come attack. And the contact center is clearly their eyes are set there. So why do they target the contact center? I've kind of talked about the human factor, but there really are a lot of different factors that can be taken into or should be taken into consideration. In the area of what they're using is they have numerous ways to kind of impersonate the member. Caller ID spoofing. It's kind of scary to think, but I can make it look like my phone call is coming from somewhere in Washington, D.C., or, wherever it may be from a location perspective. And a lot of these systems aren't able to tell that call is being spoofed and that the phone number is really not calling from that device. We're all seeing a lot more deep fakes around someone just using a different person's voice. So, part of it is that, the person didn't sound like, potentially the member. That can be solved by not necessarily just that they are actually the member, but that they're using some sort of voice modulator to have a different conversation and really mask some of the differences in the spoken word. One of the other things I think is really important is they see is, hey, you've deployed these different solutions in different areas to create protection, but it's not deployed in a broad sense where you're integrating in numerous different defenses. That's important, and that's really kind of the key. What we're talking about today is there is no silver bullet. There is no one solution that you can deploy that you can ensure that you'll have no fraud and that all of your engagements with your members will be seamless. And so really it comes with layers. And a lot of these signals, that happen from different systems, they're not all being seen throughout. So that's part of it as well, is how do you create that experience that is seen? Now, as I mentioned, the agents really are, I hate to say it, but they are your weakest point. And part of that is a challenge in your training with those individuals. And so you train them every day. This is your mission. This is how you treat your members first. You're part of the member community. This is what it's like. So they're trained to provide bend over backwards for your members, which means if they give some sort of story or use distracting background noise or different things, they could be social engineered. And the key is trying to take the emotion out of that engagement and give them the tools and different insights and analytics to help them, make better determinations without having to, worry about, okay, did what they say there sound really fishy? And really look to serve the members. So, and also, we're all looking at this from a standpoint of, the calls, the engagements continue to rise, and the types of engagements are being more complex. And there's always pressure from an operations standpoint to be able to move quicker. And when you move quicker, you try to resolve, those calls quickly. That can drive to shortcutting some of the different processes that should be taken. And I alluded to it earlier, and that we're going to jump, really into that is knowledge-based questions aren't sufficient. A lot of them are widely available. Not that I want you to go look for me, but I'm pretty sure if you went and looked for me on the internet, you're going to find a bunch of videos, which means you have a lot of my audio. You could find my home address and my contact information. And there are tons of different, data breaches that have occurred out in the industry, which means my email and potentially one of my passwords has been put out there. So, they have that information with my social security number, my birth date, those things. And so really, when we talk about how do we authenticate a member, how do we validate a member using other means and other mechanisms, there are a couple different ways we can go about that. I talked about knowledge. I'm not suggesting that using knowledge is not an effective means. What I am suggesting is it can be one of the effective means. So if you look at the different ways you can authenticate someone, knowledge is one. Think in terms of something that the person knows. They should know this, and potentially most people should not know this. Some of the things that includes your social security number, PIN, date of birth, passphrase, whatever that may be. The other areas are things that are a little bit different than knowledge, things that can't necessarily be faked as easily. So inherence is something that a user is. This could be a voice print. My spoken word is different than yours, and so it's easily identifiable. It can be things like your fingerprint, which is unique, DNA, retina. There are other types of things also, as you'll see here today, that you can kind of think of, that's kind of inherence as well. And then ownership would be things that they have, right? We use 2FA or one-time passcode as a pretty impactful approach to verifying someone, because it's sending a code to a phone that they should have, and it's sending it through SMS. So something that someone has, whether it's the phone that they're calling in, they have the debit card. Now we're starting to see a lot of applications using a security token on their devices, like a cell phone, as an additional means of identifying and authenticating. So if I move on to something and this is where Smart Apps is playing a role in this. Smart Apps, we're pulling information out of your core, and we are able to actually show that to your employees as they engage with the members. They can verify different key information about them, whether it's address verification, phone numbers, driver's license numbers, passcode, mother's maiden name. We're pulling all this information from the core, and these can be used as means to actually identify your member. Now, the ones you see on the screen here are the ones that are most likely to be leaked in a data breach from other organizations. And so we also add others, like questions you could ask about balances or interest rates on their currents, or hey, do you have a loan, a car loan with us? What car is it for? Information that may not be as readily available. A second piece to that is Smart Apps actually does a little bit on the area of something you are. Now, this is a bit of a stretch, but I'm going to go with it. Something you are is meaning in the terms of I, as a member, am going to engage with the credit union. the patterns of how I engage with the credit union and the things that occur on my account because of that engagement are things that can be shown to the employee that's handling my interaction. So if my account receives lots of calls, that could be concerning to the credit union, because that means that somebody might, if it's unexpected or out of the norm, that could mean that someone's trying to attack the account and getting information by calling to multiple different agents. So Smart Apps has this ability for you to show both unexpected threshold warnings, meaning I've received more than 6 calls in the last 24 hours, or things that are in the core. I can pull out information from the core that says, hey, their address changed in the last 30 days. That can be interesting, because one of the parts of a takeover is taking over and changing information on the member's account so that they can complete the full takeover. Things like the phone number being matching on a file. If someone's calling from a phone number that doesn't match the file, that doesn't mean it's not necessarily the member. It just means, hey, they're calling me from a phone that doesn't match. So these are things that we're using, that I'm not asking the member for the information, but I'm using the experience of or them, who they are, as a way to actually indicate potential warnings. So now moving on to something you are. So Jack Caven, CEO of VoxEQ, is going to speak a little bit about how voice biometrics, the spoken word as we're doing here now, can be used as a mechanism to both authorize and authenticate you, as well as tell us some indications of potential fraudsters. Jack, over to you.
Thank you, Michael. So I'll talk for just a moment about what was the kind of scientific inspiration for our business. For years, the idea that a voice print could be unique for a person has been well accepted. And we wanted to know, why is the voice unique? And is that reason interesting and useful? So we met with some of the top linguistic experts in the world, including at Carnegie Mellon University, and really dove into what is it that makes the voices unique. And it turns out that a lot of it is the biology of the person. It includes both your cognitive, your pulmonary, the length of your neck has an influence, the soft tissue and the tonality of your muscles. And so what we realized is that it's almost like each person is a musical instrument that's a little bit different. And if we can learn some things about that voice speaking that the financial services institutions already know about that customer, like an age range or a height or birth sex, those types of bits of information that give you almost like a second factor that you already have in place, and that's hard to fake. Then we realized that we would have a chance to expand on, the good work of voice prints that into a realm for first-time callers. And so we call those biosignals, and we have worked hard to scale those to commercial products, which means we have to be able to perform those calculations fast enough and inexpensively enough to be available to every call. So let's talk a little bit about now, what are the applications here to use this real-time voice intelligence to fight fraud. And I'm specifically referring to inbound customer care centers and the challenges that they face, where they want to distinguish, is this a legitimate caller or is this an imposter who might be attempting an account takeover, or maybe they're doing some sort of reconnaissance for some future attack. And the idea is, if we can listen to a first few seconds of the voice and understand how to basically detect an imposter, because the challenges to customer care center are that anyone can call in. You can claim that you're on vacation and you lost your smartphone and you're calling from the hotel and you want to change something in your account. And the other limitation of the legacy voice prints is that because it requires enrollment, it's very unlikely that all of your membership will be enrolled. And so that coverage problem only protects the people that have enrolled and doesn't protect all the rest of the accounts. and traditional voice print systems are fairly expensive to implement. So we took those particular challenges. We said, how can we provide a very effective extra layer and method of delivery of this to be accessible to all institutions and to help in those cases where voice print coverage is limited. So let's look at the next concept here. We have really two ways of looking at this, and I'll focus first on the left side of the screen, where the idea is to say, before we even get to are they who they say they are, let's listen for, might they be an imposter? Can we use a screen, like a screening mechanism, to say that this is a higher risk voice? And similar to Michael's point about the telephone that they're called from may not have been used before, it's a risk. It's not necessarily certain that it's the wrong person, but we want to help understand how skeptical or how confident should the agent be, and then they can know whether to have a step-up authentication, et cetera. And so the way that this screen works is we're looking for anomalies, right? This is an evidence of a mismatch. Does the voice that we hear match the member that we expect? And so those applications are things like, are they in the right age range? And other types of characteristics that might be on the driver's license. And so these biosignals help flag imposters and anomalies. And the advantage of this is that it protects all members. So there's not a voice print needed for this because you already know the year of birth, et cetera. And so even if you have a member who doesn't call in, an imposter could try to call in on their account. And this helps provide that layer of, it's like a risk elevation, right? How skeptical should the agent be? Is it a VIP and streamlined customer service white glove, or do we need to ask another question? And maybe it depends on the transaction risk, right? Do we need to have a step up or a callback, et cetera? So that's the left side of the screen. And that's something that only VoxEQ offers. There's no other way there's no other company offering this kind of screen. And then on the right-hand side is the voice print, which are great. And there are plenty of excellent providers for voice print. And our voice print leverages both sides of this. And so when you do have a member who is authenticated and they want to register their voice print in order to help protect them in the future, then that does provide the agent with a higher level of confidence of are they who they say they are in the future calls. And so this is a particular strength for validating future customers, helps streamline the authentication, and together, that's the highest level of fraud risk. So just last little bit is the idea of this fraud detection can do a couple of things that are also protecting the members in the other ways, right? Their privacy rights. We care about protecting all aspects of both the financial services institution and, of course, their account holders and members. And so Vox has designed a system that is secure by design. And what that means is we don't store any voice prints. We don't store any call audio. And that means that if somebody should breach our system, none of your information, none of your member information would be available to steal because it's not there. And the other advantage is, as we talked about, that voice screen, it protects all the account holders from the very first day, the very first call, by using those biosignals. And when we say we detect the age, it's an age range. So I'm not trying to say that it's always perfect, but it gives you a pretty strong indicator if it's an imposter, because they tend to not be quite the same age as the member that they're approaching. And then the advantage, of course, of that is you don't have to have a registered voice print. And in that same layer, we're going to detect synthetic voices, and we're going to listen for, the bad actors that are repeated callers, and we put them on a watch list and can use that to help also raise a flag of warning for the agent to know how to follow their protocols when that happens. So thank you, Michael.
Yeah, Jack, just to get a little bit of clarity on that, I got a question here, actually. So are you saying that in order to get the benefit from your solution, the member doesn't have to call in a first time and enroll in voice authentication to still get some protection for all calls?
Yeah, it's a great question, because the truth is you're unlikely to have all the members call in and enroll. And so the idea of a legacy voice print, right, it does a great job for protecting the members who do enroll or register their voice, but the imposters can attack any account, right? And they might claim that their smartphone was stolen, their wallet was stolen, they're on vacation, they're calling from a hotel phone, right? And so that's why what Vox does is it measures the information that the credit union already has, such as age and sex, and it detects the imposters who don't match the member that you expect. And credit union already has this information for all the members. So it provides a fairly comprehensive fraud screening technique, and it's only available from Vox.
Thanks, Jack. We'll move on to something you have. So Chris O'Leary from TransUnion will cover Authenticator Plus, which is something you have, and determining, are you making a phone call from the device that our systems say it's making it from? So Chris, turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you. So to your point, Michael, we are in the ownership space, and we use the physicality of the device that is connected with your contact center. So TransUnion is a carrier, licensed carrier, and we have a patented forensic process which actually monitors the routing of that call pre-answer. And so what we're actually looking into is this a unique device? So not calling from behind a PBX. Is it physical? So not virtual. And has it not been spoofed, hacked, or manipulated in any way? And we do this forensic process, 100% of carriers in the North American numbering plan. So that is about 4,000 carriers in Canada, the United States, and about 25 Caribbean nations. And we have the ability to produce an ownership token to complete this deterministic inspection on mobile devices, landline devices, and fixed VoIP devices. So think of, cable companies, triple play. So the other thing that we do outside of that deterministic forensic process is we go through a probabilistic assessment of the device that's connected. And we have a lot of unique assets within TransUnion. So for example, we support caller ID for about 850 carriers in the United States. By virtue of that, we see what devices are active and when they're active. And so we take a look and see, has there been a change in activity at various points in time? So at 2 months, at 12 months, we think if we see dramatic changes in usage, it's indicative of risk. Another business that we have identification data on virtually every household in the United States. So we'll take a look at the ANI and see if there's any identification data that's affiliated with that. And if there's none, it's kind of an indication that someone, bad actor went to great lengths in order to hide, what that identification data is. We also take a look at proprietary databases. So we'll see if it's a VoIP phone. We'll take a look at, we'll go, a level deeper than that. And what is the actual service provider? So folks like TextNow or Pinger, we have seen a disproportional amount of fraud traffic because the low barrier of entry in order to get those virtual devices. So we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at when was the phone ported, how recently was it ported, and the actual date of that. So we take that, the SIP header information and the stir shaken insights, and we bake that into a score. That score, if you look off to the right, is in increments of 100. The lower the score, the higher risk we think is affiliated with that particular device. The higher the score, the lower risk. And so we provide that score in increments of 100. And our clients will actually take the deterministic assessment and they'll take the probabilistic assessment and they'll modify their call treatment strategies. So if you take a look at, a typical contact center, you have all the calls coming in on the left. About 75% of the time, we have the ability to provide an ownership token or to have that deterministic authentication. And so what our clients do is they'll take a lot of the friction out of that authentication process. I think by and large, most organizations have added, knowledge factor question after knowledge factor question. So knowing that you can trust that device puts you in a position to pull some of that friction out of it. So we see a significant time and average handle time, somewhere around 45 seconds a call we can pull out. We see the addition of caller permissions, so doing more in the IVR because you can trust it. And then if you take a look toward the bottom part of the slide, this is where our clients take the trust indicator score and they modify call treatment. So if it's a higher score, they still have the ability to pull some of the friction out of it. If it's a middle score, maybe it's kind of just standard business as usual. And if it's a low score, that's where you see stepped up authentication and or routing to fraud agents and things like that. So.
That's great, Chris. One of the things I thought about with that strategy, one of my favorites that I heard is, hey, if we get a trust indicator that's in that red area, send those callers to leave a voicemail that will call back, because no fraudster wants to leave a voicemail to have you call back. So it's yet another or an interesting kind of strategy to use, but definitely good in terms of kind of elevating the, hey, do I have a more senior agent to take this, or do I allow them to do any self-service and based on that experience? So kind of in the same vein, Chris, on the question I asked for Jack. So does this system require any enrollment, or is it kind of something that every single call that comes in, even if it's the first time that person's calling me, that it will work?
So the system does not require enrollment and is first call accurate. So we will run that deterministic assessment first time we see that device. And again, we're going to inspect it, make sure it hasn't been spoofed, hacked, or manipulated, that there's no breaks in the signaling, and then kind of give you the thumbs up or the thumbs down.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. And so moving on, I'm going to ask Eric Hopper, CTO of IDGo, in the same vein, in the area of something you have, but a different take on it. Eric, I'd love to turn it over to you to talk about how you kind of take, I like to refer to as taking one-time passcode on steroids, providing a much more secure approach to using that temporary PIN or a secure thing that we're all getting used to these days, accessing anything we do at work as it is.
Great. Thank you, Michael. So IDGo, as we've been talking about, is member authentication. This first left blue bullet talks about our three primary objectives. All features are designed around these three objectives. The first one is operational efficiency. We're talking about the contact center. We talk to clients and prospects every week. Average authentication time when you're using KBA is typically 90 seconds. We've heard it up to 4 or 5 minutes. So with IDGo, we can bring that down to 0 by initiating an authentication in the IVR or in an AI agent. Clearly, our objective is also to prevent fraud, reduce fraud, and enhance both the member and the agent's experience. A lot of the clients, once they've deployed IDGo, their agents are like, this is awesome. These authenticated members are being handed to me. I'm answering the phone. I know who they are. I don't have to figure out the best way to, ask the right questions at the right time. Halfway through the call, they ask for something more complicated. I have to ask more KBA questions. So we get a lot of positive feedback that we just deliver authenticated members to agents. So as you stated, Michael, our primary premise is around something you have, your mobile phone. We also allow the users, the end users or members, to create a key on the phone. Either they can register their phone or they can use a passkey. Something interesting around passkeys is they're also biometric. So if the user chooses biometrics, they're going to get multi-factor authentication with IDGo. They have to have their phone, and they have to have the biometrics that they set up on their phone. So in either case, there's a key on their phone, and that key is required to complete future authentications. Lastly, we're omni-channel. We normally start in the contact center. We have a simple portal that we can deploy overnight and get you started. But then we rapidly move to doing integrations in the IVR or in chatbots. We've had folks use this in the branch due to fake IDs being presented, ITMs, and it allows members to have a common authentication experience no matter the channel. And this also brings confidence to the members that they feel that they're being authenticated. They're not being challenged with different ways depending on how they're engaging you. Yeah, and that's it. And we're a late entrant, but that's the primary distinction and unique things around IDGo.
So something caught my ear there. So it makes perfect sense in the contact center. We're talking about it today. That is, a place that's being attacked. But you're able to provide even protection. Someone walking into the branch. So talk to me about what that experience looks like. Do I walk up to a teller and they say, "Oh, I see you're enrolled in this," and maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Exactly. You nailed it, Michael. We were contacted. We hadn't considered using it in the branch. We'd always considered IDGo to be used in any channel. We have public APIs that credit unions or banks can implement to kick IDGo authentications off anywhere. But Corning Credit Union, one of our initial clients, was having a fraud attempt where folks were showing up with all the credentials of a member, but the fraudster's picture. They go into a branch, conduct a wire transfer, get some money, turn around, drive to another branch. They contacted us and said, "Could we use IDGo in the branch?" And we were like, "We don't see why not, as long as you give your tellers and the folks that are serving the customers access to the IDGo portal, no problem." They started doing it. And to your point, Michael, if they have IDGo, they just initiate authentication and they squash that kind of fraud ring around driver's license. I should note that we have two modes. I didn't put it in there, but we have two modes of enrollment. We do require enrollment, but we can do it through a batch process. That's what we did with Corning. They gave us a file of their member information, and we preloaded all the accounts so that when members showed up, they could be authenticated, or they can do enrollments basically in the contact center or in the branch, really anywhere, through the same IDGo agent portal. Good question. Thanks for asking it.
Absolutely. As we see here, there's lots of different options, and kind of as I was, alluding to with the presentation today, is you really have to use multiple different avenues, and it's also kind of important to be sometimes consistently inconsistent about your approach, meaning fraudsters are looking for patterns. They're looking for holes. And so kind of the key is we got to see a lot of different solutions. They come at it from different angles and cover the different areas that you really need to look for coverage in. But how do we bring it all together? Because that's a lot to accomplish. And that's really where Smart Apps, we look at these different solutions that credit unions out there, banking institutions, are adopting to solve, point specific fraud prevention or streamlining authentication. And we look at it and say, now how can we actually bring this all together in a seamless solution? So if you can think about it, where we're looking at, and you're going to get to see some of this with Scott here, is bringing these different, something we pulled out of the core information, the KBA from the core, something you are, the voice I'm speaking, I can do an analysis. I pulled up the member's profile. It says it's a male and they're supposed to be 52. Doesn't sound like it. Or other visibility of different interactions. Wow, someone has called 5 times in the last hour. That seems very odd behavior. And oh, by the way, the last 3 calls that we received all look suspicious, marked suspicious by agents. And then there's something you have, as we kind of talked about there with the device verification. Is this phone actually the phone making the call? And then using the phone as a mechanism to do that multi-factor authentication. The key here is not one of these, as I mentioned before, is a silver bullet. And when you add them together, they're equal, kind of the old adage, 1 + 1 = 3. They really are. And you can combine them to actually provide better experience while you're providing better fraud prevention. So I'm going to ask Scott to take over the share here, and he is going to walk us through kind of the end-to-end experience of what this looks like inside Smart Apps and how you can use this. I think one thing I will call out as Scott kind of kicks this off is think in terms of how can I change the experience if I can trust the phone number that's coming in that's the Annie? Or how can I change the experience if the voice doesn't match the age of the member's profile? You're going to get to see some of that with Scott. So Scott, all yours.
All right. No, this is great. And I think you've heard from the 3 fellows, Jack, Chris, and Eric, and even Michael has talked about the layers of security. And I always like to compare this to the front door of your house. Do you have a doorbell camera? Do you have a deadbolt? Do you have one of those adjustable aluminum sticks behind the doorknob on the back side? They're all layers of security. They all work together to deter those fraudsters that are attacking your credit union. So let's jump in here. And this is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to bring everything to life. And I apologize in advance. I get paid by the word, but this is kind of the exciting part of the meeting. So I'm already logged into Genesis Cloud in this example. I can see that my workforce management is reminding me I'm supposed to be on the queue right now. So I'm going to put myself on the queue to make myself eligible for the next call. So when I do this, I should be getting a call right away from Tony Stark. I'm going to set focus here to our smart applications, and I'll go ahead and answer the call. Now, we think it's Tony Stark because they've done some authentication through the smart apps. Maybe it's Smart Screen Pop, maybe it's Smart Teller, maybe it's Proactive Info. But if I look over here on the right-hand side, I can see some different things that are going on. These are some of the warning messages that Michael had mentioned. We're getting these warning threshold. There's been excessive calls. Have they called in a lot? Those are completely configurable inside of Smart App Site Manager. We've had excessive calls, not only from the member ID, but the caller ID. Now, this part happened really quickly. I want to talk about the 3 main pillars that Michael mentioned: something you know, something you are, and something you have. So over here on the left-hand pane, this is where we get into the something you know. So I've got a really quick snapshot here of things like mobile phone, social security number, date of birth. Those different elements that Michael had also mentioned are kind of not hard to get. You could probably get a lot of this off of Facebook. We all love our moms, right? So you could probably figure out your mom's maiden name by snooping around on Facebook a little bit. So this is good, and it's a good place to start, including things like your passcode. I might ask the person calling in, can you tell me your passcode? They might know that, they might not. But let's look over here at some of the other things. So let's talk about something you are. And this happened really quick when I called in, and I can see that VoxEQ has already marked this as a low risk. So as I believe it was Jack that said earlier, even if you're not enrolled in biometric authentication, we're able to do an age analysis or verification. This is low risk, so we think that the age of this person calling in matches pretty close with their date of birth from the core. I'm getting some other things over here, and this is where we get into the TransUnion functionality with also a little bit of ownership of what you have. And this is where, again, with Authenticator Plus, I'm getting a green line here. That's indicating that we believe that phone number that's calling into us right now on our CU number for member services or loan originations, we believe that that is assigned to the device that it's calling in from on one of the carrier networks that we're pinging to find this information out. I also see that this phone number here is matching the phone number that we have on file for the member in the core. All of this looks really good on the surface, including right up here at the top where it says it's authenticated, but I have reason for pause like we said earlier, these fraudsters are getting more and more clever, and they might have been able to pick some of this information up. The thing that gives me the biggest pause right here is the excessive calls detected. And right away, this person pretending to be Tony Stark, maybe they're pretending, maybe they're not, but they're asking me to do something risky, a wire transfer, maybe a loan application for a new vehicle loan. And that's where we can get into the ownership part, something that you have. And we talked about this with the IDGo, which is really kind of fun to show. So over here on the snapshot, I'm going to do the IDGo part. I'm going to click right here on the IDGo verification. Now, if we're taking the happy path, this member is already enrolled, but when I click on this, this is where we get into this verification. Here's the number that we want to send this challenge to for this token, and I'm going to go ahead and authenticate. Now, I know you're not able to see my cell phone, but I'm going to click on the authenticate button and show you a quick screen on what that looks like. So let me bring that up here really quickly. What I'm getting initially, and again, I know you can't see my phone, but I just received a text message on my phone, and it looks just like the screenshot here. I need to click on that link that I just received via this text message to indicate that I want to approve that. When I click on that, I go to the second image here. Do I want to approve that authentication? And all of this works because I've enrolled my mobile device in the IDGo service, and I'm going to say, yes, I want to complete that authentication. And now on my screen on my mobile phone, I can see the third screenshot I have up here on the far right. Thank you for using IDGo to securely authenticate yourself. We're good to go. And if I go back here to this screen, I can see as an agent's perspective through the lens of an agent that Tony Stark has actually gone ahead and done that authentication. I can go ahead and click the OK button. I'm off to the races. I can close that up. If there's a joint member on the account, maybe it's Pepper Potts and she's borrowing Tony's cell phone number. Very quickly, I could switch to the joint member on the account, maybe even switch the account here in the dropdown. And presuming that Pepper has enrolled, I could do exactly the same thing. It can do the VoxEQ, it can do the age analysis, low risk, everything is good. I can see the phone number. I can see this Authenticator Plus indicating the number is valid for whatever phone number maybe Pepper is calling in from. But I've got all of this right here in a single source of truth. Now let's take a look at this a little bit differently. And I kind of precluded this, or I guess preluded it, with these warning threshold messages I'm getting over here. Even though everything is past the sniff test with VoxEQ, with Authenticator Plus, with IDGo, I might want to look a little bit deeper just to double check. And this is where we're going to circle back to what you know, something that you know. And I'm going to go into the authentication history. When I click into this in this new user interface for our smart apps, this is where I can see a lot of previous interactions that this caller has had with other agents in my contact center. And think of this as two sides of a coin, right? You've got heads and tails. Because they authenticated through the smart apps up here, I can look at the member ID. If I want to flip that coin over because maybe they didn't authenticate and they're trying to social engineer their way into account, I can also look at the information from the phone number that it's coming from. Now, again, whether I'm going heads or tails here, I see the green light over here. Okay, this is from Authenticator Plus. But if I look down here a little bit further, I'm getting the red light. And I like to use the green light, red light, yellow light, maybe even orange light, rolling up to a stoplight. Green means good or go. Red means you better stop. Yellow or orange could be some of the things that Chris talked about. Maybe the number's been recently ported. Maybe they're with one of those carriers where the barrier to entry is very easy and doesn't have a lot of security associated with it. When I look at any one of these that are red, I can see the previous agent marked it as suspicious. This is not a Lone Ranger mask. He was a good guy. This is a Bandito mask. This is a bad guy. They manually failed the authentication. And as I click the arrow here to see what happened, this is where I can see the recent agent, Scott Ridgway, said, hey, this person calling in kept asking for hints, didn't know their spouse's date of birth. Be extremely cautious with this caller. Then I can go again a little bit deeper into the what you know, because remember on the snapshot, these are things that might be really easy to get off the dark web. If I want to go a little bit a little layer deeper, look at information we can pull from your core, that's where I can go into the security details tab over here on the right. Tony, do you have a joint member on the account? Yeah, her name's Pepper Potts. We're married. Okay, great. What's her date of birth? I don't know. Okay, strike one. Do you have a credit card with us? I sure do. I'm looking at it right now. It's a Visa card. So you click on it once to turn it green, click on it twice to turn it red. If I got a little bit click happy up here, I can click on it a third time to clear it off. If I don't feel good about this caller dialing in because maybe they've failed some other things that I was taking the happy path earlier, maybe Authenticator Plus was showing that it was red instead of green, indicating we think the number's been spoofed. Maybe VoxEQ is saying, hey, we didn't really feel comfortable about the age verification. We think it's a high-risk call. They failed the IDGo challenge where it was checking the token on their registered mobile device. If we were taking the bad path, what I could do as an agent is I can manually fail it up here with a red button. Right now we're authenticated, but I can change that quickly. And I'll go down here in the bottom right-hand corner. I can drop some notes in here, kept asking for hints. Be careful with this caller. I can mark it as suspicious and update the notes. I would do that so that the next time this person calls in, if I believe that they're a bad guy, I want the next agent in my contact center to see that information here in the authentication history, as well as be able to see the threshold warnings here in the snapshot that we started the meeting with. Now, let me circle back just for a moment. We're going to go back to the inherent, something that you are, back to the voice biometrics. We're going to visit that for just a moment before we open it up for questions. After we've gone through all of this, Tony says, wow, that felt like an interrogation. And that's why we're talking about doing this in layers. We walk a fine line between making sure the person is the member they say they are and interrogating them. Tony felt a little bit interrogated by this. Scott, isn't there an easier way that we could get through this a little bit quicker? And I can say, yes, there is. So we're going to go back to VoxEQ here for just a moment. And this is where I can see when the last time was we offered the opportunity for them to enroll. Now, remember, even if they're not enrolled in biometric authentication, I can still do the age verification. So we're still getting some mileage out of VoxEQ. But if we want to make it quicker and snappier the next time that they call in, I can click here on this yellow icon where it says low risk, and I can say, well, Tony, would you like to register? And he might say no. The last time that we talked about this, he said, no, not now, maybe another time. I'm kind of busy. That's why we're getting the yellow up here, indicating we offered it maybe yesterday, earlier today, 4 days ago, whatever. But if I click on the yes button, then we can start talking. We can talk about the weather. How was your kid's ball game last night? What are you doing for Thanksgiving? As we're talking, it's creating this passive authentication for me so that the next time they call in, if we do an authentication match based on their enrollment, we would see it say that it's passed right here. So this is great. So that was really kind of a quick look at it. We're going to go ahead and finish this call. So Tony says, great, thanks for all your help. Let's go ahead and finish this up here. He disconnects the call on me, and away the call goes. We're going to see this kind of scrunch down a little bit. This is a little bit of Genesis Cloud stuff where it's doing some different types of AI. It's doing predictive AI here where the person said they wanted to do a wire transfer, an auto loan. So I may have 15 or 30 or 50 different wrap-up codes. Now I can choose the one that's most accurate because it's predicting the most, I guess, the most sensible one to choose from based on the transcription of the interaction. Down here, it's creating this conversation summary for me. So if I want to put this information in my core, I'm going to do this kind of the low rent way for the sake of our demo today. I'll just kind of paste it in here, but imagine I'm putting that information into the core, maybe a CRM application, ServiceNow, Salesforce, Dynamics, what have you. And this generative AI saves me a lot of time as an agent because now I don't have to go back in my own memory banks between my ears and remember everything I discussed with this member. Once we're done with everything, I'll close up the notes. We'll go down here and click the done button, and voila, that was a really quick guided tour of bringing these three fantastic layers of security together. Again, VoxEQ, where we're doing the age verification and the biometrics. Authenticator Plus, where we're doing the device level authentication, and then IDGo to actually validate with tokens the ownership of that device. So some really good stuff that we've rolled into our smart apps. And Michael, with that, I know we're kind of running kind of short on time. We're down to just a handful of minutes left. Are there any questions from the crew that maybe we could talk about a little bit?
I just want to know how many actual cents or dollars you get paid per minute. I was looking for, because that was pretty awesome.
Dog
Well,
needs
thank you,
grooming, so I
Scott.
think I paid for it today. Yes.
So just to kind of wrap things up, we threw a lot at you. There are options. The key is adopting some, all. There definitely is the ability, as you could see there with Scott, to use all of them in a given interaction. But I think also the importance is when you deploy multiples of these together, they really can build upon each other and create a better experience for both the employee and the member. One of the things, is you heard me kind of reiterate, fraud is always evolving, right? Once you close one door, they're going to find a new way in. And really the approach of having these layers that you apply are key. And while some of it may have seemed complicated, maybe there's a lot going on there, kind of the key here is that a lot of these tools can be running like the voice analysis is running, kind of invisibly, or the voice authentication is happening automatically. The insight coming from the trusted indicator is giving kind of a quick insight. So Scott did a great job of kind of showing all the different areas you can look at. But kind of the key is you have to assess also as an agent, they're just asking for a balance. Okay. I don't need to take them through lots of those, maybe a quick voice verification, or the fact that it came in green from a TransUnion, that may be sufficient to only ask one verification question. There's always a balancing act too. You don't want to scare your members when you don't ask them any questions, because then they think you're not being secure. But one of the most important things that I talk to about credit unions with these new solutions is make sure they know that you're putting them in place. And it's not just because it's change and it's new, but it's showing them that you care about protecting their assets and you're looking out and making sure that you're deploying the best options possible. So with that, I want to open up for Q&A. I saw I had a quick question there, but I will, I'm going to start off with a question for, let's see here. We did get a question about specifically around, go ahead and answer this one. So does Smart Apps recognize if a joint owner? So when Scott was going through that demo, he didn't switch between the people, but one of the things you can consider with Smart Apps, we will determine when you ask for determine the account, who are the members of the account. And each individual are really looked at as separate authentication. Meaning if Scott were to have switched to Pepper, that authentication of authenticated that came from the IVR is no longer valid. Because when Scott called through the IVR, he provided information to the member number and the PIN of the primary. It's not the joint. That also allows, though, if you can think about it with voice biometrics, if I do switch between the different members, you could even support the concept of, hey, let me get my wife real quick. She'll provide you the information. Now I'm handing her the phone. You're switching it on the screen. Now voice authentication or voice analysis can be performed separately for that portion of the interaction. So really can be applied through navigation within the system. Let's see here. I'll open for, one thing, Jack, I did have curiosity is I hear a lot of concerns around voice and the fact that, you get a voice print. Okay, that's PII. So how is your system unique in its approach around securing the voice print or not allowing it to be able to be, in the case of a data breach, to be able to be used?
That's a great question. And the simple answer is we don't store any voice prints for your members. We store voice prints of the bad actors to put on a watch list. But that information isn't in our database. We generate it using the system, deliver it back to you into Smart Apps, and then it's encrypted, and we never store anything to disk. So we have it just for the seconds that it's being generated. We send it back. We keep the encryption key. You keep the encrypted voice print. So if you get breached, the key is not there and they can't decrypt it. And the the separation of concerns helps protect everybody, protect you, protect us, protect the credit union, and protect the member.
Yeah, definitely. I see that kind of the approach of the solution and the technology. You're kind of separating. I like to think of it as you're separating the keys from the actual print itself. And so, if any one system is actually compromised, whoever compromises it has a lot of nothing. So they're not going to be able to do anything with it in those terms. So definitely can dive into that more. I know we're at time, but I do want to get a couple more questions. So for those that want to hear some of these additional questions, appreciate you keeping on. Chris, you talked about a lot of your kind of solution was a focus on the inbound side. I've heard credit unions, they're concerned about, hey, I get reports from my members that we're calling them and it's not actually us. Do you offer solutions for protecting the credit union on an outbound call side around giving trust to the members to say, yes, this call is actually from us?
We do. We have a solution called spoofed call protection, and it essentially helps enterprises, banks, insurance companies, credit unions from having their number spoofed to the end member, and then having them perpetrate ATOs because the member thinks they're calling in from the fraud department and they give them information. So spoof call protection is a great solution and something highly relevant in this day and age. We've seen lots of fraud perpetrated that way.
Great, Chris. Last question, going to give it to Eric. So Eric, we talked about the solution with the IDGo and the fact that the token is on the device. What does that mean if a member gets a new phone? Do they have to start over? What's that process look like?
Good question, Michael. So we leverage two things. There's a device registration and there is a pass key. So I'll start with passkey. Passkeys, Apple moved them to the keychain last year, maybe it was a year before. But if you buy a new Apple device, your actual passkey is in the keychain. So it just automatically works on your mobile phone. Oh, just a sec. Extend dock. Sorry, I got a little prompt up. If they register their device, they would have to, there's an account recovery process they'd have to go through to re-register, or they'd have the opportunity to create a pass key.
And that's great. So and on top of that, that's kind of the key, is that's somewhat good that it's providing you that protection, right?
Yeah.
Is because if someone takes your device, they're not able to press the yes, I approve this, right? Or do a SIM swap and still look like you think they're the device that's making the SMS, for a traditional one-time passcode. So
yeah,
I appreciate you guys sticking on. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, to that point, Michael, since we put a key on the device, we're immune to SIM swap because that's a new phone. It won't have our key. Same with port out. Anyway, there's lots of fraud use cases. Great talk. Thank you.
I appreciate everybody staying on for a little bit extra. I hope you got an appreciation for the different approaches and different things that you can use to provide a multi-layered defense. A really bad pun joke would be, hopefully you can see how TTEC Digital can provide you the offense in providing those solutions to your members and to your employees to make really a better experience. So you can reach out to us if you want to know more and dive into any of these solutions in more detail. Appreciate your time and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.